But sometimes the superstructure also affects the structure. That's what I wanted to get into later. Like I wanted to talk about what everybody thinks about the whole defund
right.
the police,
Absolutely.
abolish the police
Absolutely.
thing, right? Because in my view, it's not a negative. In my view, it's a positive. So we were talking about this on the last pod before the movement had any demands, right? We were saying like, oh, the libs are just going to turn this into, you know, some stupid aesthetic reforms, you know, like, oh, the guy gets charged and, you know, they ban chokeholds or whatever the fuck it is, but they don't address anything systemic. But I think that the demands that are rising now, and we're seeing like actual material consequences of these demands, like the Minneapolis police being defunded by city council. I think that's huge. A lot of people just act like, you know, oh, well, they're just going to be replaced by private security or whatever the fuck it is. But I think it's fucking massive that we've had in the US a city council have a veto-proof majority in their voting to defund the police.
Well,
I think that's fucking huge.
They dissolved the whole police department.
Exactly. That's what yeah. Like they dissolved.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out exactly. Like what exact form it takes, because they're promising a community-based or community-led policing force, right? So
yeah,
something that's apparently completely different and more transparent. So it's going to be interesting to see like exactly what shape that takes and who has the say in shaping that.
So they're dismantled as of now, or is it a work in progress? I thought it was something like in a couple years.
I think it's a work in progress.
So
I don't think it'll take a couple of years though.
Yeah, well, I mean, the police are still active right now, right? That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I do think it is like a trap. I think it is a sort of, you know, they say they'll defund them and create something new with no specifications of what it's going to become.
Exactly.
Right. And it's just a nice platitude to shut everybody up and get everybody home.
I don't really think that like it's like a good foot to start out on for like some like leftist movement to have their first demand be like austerity measures. I'm like not wild about that. I get it and everything, and like maybe we didn't have a thesaurus handy to like come up with a better slogan, but like defund X just seems like not
absolutely
fucking direction I want, and
absolutely,
and like grab a fucking thesaurus, like you could like that is, I don't know, the idea of like funneling money, excuse me. Away from the police to other things. I mean, like, you know, I worked a job in Seattle where I was calling the cops on homeless people pretty fucking regularly. And I would have conversations with officers being like, look, man, like, this is them talking to me, like, them telling me, like, they gotta do the job of, you know, a social worker for so much of this shit. Right. And, like, you see, like, a lot of these cities, like, 80% of their calls are homeless people.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
So, like, I mean, it's pretty immediate to me, like, why it would be a good idea to funnel some of this money into other forms of
social services. Right.
Yeah, thank you. I was about to say community maintenance.
You're becoming lib. You're getting the lib brain.
but you know what I mean? And like, but yeah, I don't know if defund is exactly. All I'm saying is defund gives me plenty of room to be skeptical.
Absolutely, no.
And I am skeptical.
Absolutely.
For me, obviously, I think it would be good to be able to rethink the way that we have our police force. But to me, it's a matter of who's doing that rethinking. And I think it needs to be emphasized that we keep a really close watch on that. Like, obviously, I don't know if there's anything we could even fucking do about it, right? But, like, if we leave it up to, like, capital to restructure our police for us, we're going to end up with a wholesale of our police force off to capital, which is going to be, which will be like, quote, like that private policing that we've heard, and which is like part of the first steps of a slip towards fascism. So it's a double-sided coin. Like, it could definitely go well and give us some breathing room for, like, hopefully we can use that breathing room to work on building class consciousness rather than like saying, phew, we did it. but also at the same time, it could go astronomically worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's precedents of them defunding schools, defunding a lot of social services, and then saying, look how shitty it is. It's not running very well. We should privatize it. We need to privatize it. And it's like, all right, if you apply that to the police, oh, look, the police aren't working well. We should defund them. Oh, now they're working even worse. Oh, you know what would be better if we just put these in private hands, like what they want to do with the NHS in Britain.
Yeah, and I just like don't support abolishing the police.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean,
100% don't.
No, I don't.
I think that there's a little confusion about what abolishing the police really means. I think that's a reason that a lot of the right is latched on to this slogan and made it like a rallying cry for them to unite a lot of the conservative and right-wing people that may not have been, straightforward on a lot of issues together, but to unite them based on this. Because it is ambiguous, right? But I personally believe that the institution of policing, as we know it right now, would have no function in a socialist society. So I think that abolishing the police, or even at least getting the idea into the mainstream, I think that's extremely positive. And I think that, of course, the way we look at society being structured right now, I don't think any of us can imagine a society with just no police. Like, we can't. Like, that just, it just isn't viable right now. But I think to get the idea into the mainstream and have people have a conception of a society that could function without the institution of the police as it is right now, which is just to defend property rights and to enforce the will of capital on people who do not agree, which is like the police. The reason that a lot of people from the suburbs haven't had bad experiences with the police is because they're not part of the lumpen proletariat class. Yeah. So the police are not their enemy. The main function of the police is to brutally suppress the lumpen proletariat, because the lumpen proletariat is the only class that functions outside of capitalist labor relations. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's a threat to them, because they don't want people to see that, hey, you can get rich by selling drugs. You can get rich by pimping. They don't want people to see that and emulate it. So they suppress that with all the force that they can. That's why a lot of people in the suburbs haven't had the experiences with the police. But now it's coming into the mainstream consciousness, the brutality of the police, that the lumpen proletariat class, which is the reason that I think it's gotten so mixed up with race, is because African Americans, black people in the U.S., are basically synonymous with the lumpen proletariat. That's why they get a lot of systemic oppression. I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough.
Absolutely.
Nobody talks, right? A lot of these cops, I'm telling you, individually, I've known a lot of cops. They are not individually, a lot of times, racist. They are not. But the reason that they will do systemic racism to black people is because they identify them as lumpen proletariats.
No, that's another thing. Another thing is that a lot of these cops are minorities. A lot of these cops are black or Hispanic or whatever, and they crack. Yeah. I mean, and they'll crack down on other black people just as hard, because it's not about
harder. Actually, it's harder sometimes.
No, and it's not really. It's like what we talked about in the last episode. It's not about race. It's about class. Is about suppressing, like you said, the lumpen prole. Who happens to occupy most of that? Black people, by a bunch of systemic orders and chain of events. That's how things happen. But it's purely by coincidence that they're the lumpen prole. There's nothing genetically about them that makes them lumpen prole. So because of that, that's how people. Yeah, you're right. That's how people identify the lumpen prole as black. So if it looks visually like that, and that's why I think a lot of this has been co-opted. Because now people can just frame this as a black-white thing, when really, and as soon as it happened, as soon as the video dropped, like within an hour, I watched it and I was like, you get that same soul-crushing feeling you get when you watched Garner or Sterling or all them, and then I'm like, I know how this is gonna go. You already know. It's going back to the same old fucking binary of this is black and white. This is about cops and people. It's not really about cops. I mean, this is why I don't think. I get what you mean about abolishing the police, but I feel the same way about open borders or whatever. Is like a lot of the anarchist, utopian ideals is like, I'm down for that, but you need to get the world, the whole world has to get close to that.
This is out of where we are, and it wouldn't even be a socialist like a socialist country we would need a communist state.
Yeah, we got to get there
it's
first.
So fucking remote from that.
Exactly. People are asking for like salt and a lot of special sauce when we're not even, people are hungry. Like, you need to give the basics first before we can figure out. You need to get rid of why there's crime to begin with before we talk about getting rid of police. If we just talk about getting rid of police, but the reasons for crime and violence still go on, it's going to backfire horrendously.
Right. And this is why I always talk about Gramsci's concept of the hegemony, right? Because he realized that there is no way to abolish certain aspects of a capitalist liberal society without first achieving hegemony. Okay, that means having your ideas become the mainstream. So once people, like, this is what I always say about stages. This is why I say we can't be looking at stage 10 when we're not even finished stage 1.
Right.
We're babies. We're learning to crawl right now. We're like, oh, why can't I run a triathlon? Why can't we be running a triathlon?
Right.
So that's the way I see it. So it's about a war, a psychological war in the consciousness of the masses. So to get these ideas out there, I think is a net positive, but to dwell on them as practical goals in this very historical instance, I think is missing the point entirely. So just like saying, oh, abolish the police. I'm not happy with anything besides abolishing the police. I think that's retarded. But I think to get that idea out there that, hey, there is a society possible, just to have that thought in people's minds when, 2 months ago, they could not even conceptualize a society without the institution of policing. I think that's a hegemonic victory. So in the hegemonic war, I think that that's a victory to just get that thought into people's heads, to get people imagining a society that's not a liberal capitalist police state is a victory, because capitalist realism and these things talk about, people cannot even conceptualize that kind of world. And yeah, absolutely, until we completely change society, there's no way to actually practically achieve these goals. But to get those ideas out into the mainstream and to have them in the collective consciousness, I think is a positive, because it means that we're winning the war of hegemony. Right now, the counter-hegemonic narrative is gaining ground on the liberal capitalist hegemony.
I don't know. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because we're basically talking Overton window right here.
Right.
Which I'm definitely skeptical of, because it can feel like the cat and the laser pointer a lot of the time. But also looking at where's the Hegelian dialectic in all this, right? This is coming back to what I was saying last time about all right, what institution is best poised to be behind the wheel when changes are made and make those decisive turns? Well, it's Black Lives Matter, and that's bad for quite a few reasons. Right. And I'm looking at CHAZ, right, which I went to yesterday.
Yeah, they told me about that. That's crazy.
We're waiting for you.
Yeah, we're
to come with your commentary.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was encouraging. I had a pretty good time.
Surprising.
Did not expect that.
Yeah, I genuinely had a good time. Awesome. And I even got really good footage of some shit going down. I deleted it because I got sketched out about posting people's faces and shit.
That's
Yeah, but I'll figure out what I'm gonna do with it, and I'll get it out there.
You did some debauchery down there. That's why you had a good time. You're trying to delete the videos. You got caught up with some messed up stuff.
Oh man,
orgies in the streets.
The orgies,
those
yeah.
Anarchist girls, am I right?
Yeah.
No, point is, yesterday, I think it just happened yesterday, you get these people saying, Black Lives Matter does not endorse the name CHAZ, we're not autonomous, we're going by the name CHOP now. Do you guys hear about this bullshit?
No, we didn't hear about that. Please explain.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. So this is perfect, because I was so stoked when I heard this, because this just perfectly demonstrates my whole conversation that I've been wanting to have about this whole thing. They said it for me, which is, I don't know what CHOP stands for, so apologies there. But that is Black Lives Matter saying, we don't want to be an autonomous zone. This is, and I'm reading between the lines here a little bit, this is, the ANCOM white kids, the CHAZ thing. And we want CHOP. And specifically, we don't want to be considered autonomous. We don't want to challenge the sovereignty of the United States or anything like that.
Mhm.
You don't
Right.
want any of that, right? Well, I'm sitting here thinking, I mean, it's just further proof, like, no, Black Lives Matter is a reactionary force in this. And I know that, like, people are giving Amy a hard
100%.
time because she's talking about this stuff as reactionary. And I think that, like, she's getting towards something meaningful. Or maybe she means what I'm about to say, and I just didn't read between the lines. But, like, no, in this case, Black Lives Matter is the reactionary force. And yeah, as far as, like, any, like, dialectic going on with this and everything, like, they're the ones poised to challenge the narrative and get their will enacted.
Well, yeah. Anybody?
And the actual meaningful shit that CHAZ represents is like 100% on the part of the ANCOMs right now.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I guess I'm like expecting questions now or something. But I just found that name conflict so telling.
It's funny.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, that's not the only thing that's telling. Like, I 100% agree with the analysis that Black Lives Matter is reactionary, completely counterproductive. It's deliberately pushed by liberals to divide the underclass and prevent
Yeah.
them from having any kind of effective movement. I completely agree with that. I mean, I think that's 100%. And I think a perfect example of that is like what you said, like trying to drive a wedge between, Black people who are really upset at the system, and then the ANCOM whites who are actually on their side. But if you look at like the propaganda push by the liberal media, it's really trying hard to make it seem like the white ANCOMs, these
Outside
these
antagonizers.
outside antagonizers, exactly, these college educated neckbeards are hijacking our movement. I think that's perfect example of how a lot of the currents coming up from these contradictions coming to the fore are actually threatening to the liberal state. And I'll explain this a little bit further later, but I think when we see, people like Stacey Abrams and CAP and Joe Biden come out against defund the police and say, no, that's going a step too far. I think we need to just reform the police. I think it shows you a little bit how they're actually threatened by some of the systemic demands that are coming, organically rising from the movement.
I will say one thing about the Biden point, though, is that he responded by saying, like, no, I think the answer is to have, basically just like the party line is going to be in this, and he said basically to this effect, have investigations of police forces and then react to, misconduct,
Specific instances,
case by case,
things like that, and then in reaction to that, you hold off money or not, right?
Shit.
Yeah.
Well, but in my mind, that's functionally what defund the police is going to become anyways. And I will also say what I previously said about federalization of police forces, those fucking bureaucracies that will exist to look into police forces are the first huge step in that direction. I fucking guarantee you. And the people in the county should worry about that more than anybody. Anyways, when I was up there, I got good footage of some like Jesus freak showing up and trying to like incite some shit. And I got like probably like a good like 10 minutes of footage. I was pretty happy with it. But something like kind of struck me, which is he charged the stage and got up there, and one of the head organizers, who wasn't explicitly Black Lives Matter, but like a similar affiliated kind of identitarian group, had said like, "Hey, do we have any like white people here who have any experience and security that can come and take care of this guy?" And that stuck out to me. And a few minutes later, and this is what right-wing media is making hay about, you get Antifa kids and their little black bloc or whatever, taking the guy down to the ground and holding it, right? They get him in a headlock. This is being called a chokehold, yada yada.
And the George Floyd.
Yeah, right. these motherfuckers are being guided to do that. They're being asked by the fucking organizers who aren't getting their hands dirty to intervene and physically remove the guy. And then in the same breath, these Black Lives Matter activists are driving a wedge and saying, no, this is the name that we want. No, the white out-of-town activists are coming in and causing trouble. And it's like, motherfucker, first of all, the fucking market and the community garden and all of that shit is the fucking communists doing that shit. And second, motherfuckers are using them as your workhorses for security to begin with. And then you're just going to throw them under the fucking bus. Right, exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these ANCOMs who are just so far into the fucking Kool-Aid punch bowl of this bullshit don't even have a single bone of self-preservation or just self-respect in their body to actually fucking look out for themselves and see what's happening. Right. They're useful idiots. They're being used, and I think we see it a lot. They're fucking cucks. Yes. And literally, like, everything that was cool about CHAZ, and I'm not calling it CHOP. I'm not calling it CHOP. Everything that was cool about CHAZ when I went there was, like, very obviously the communist work. Right. Yeah, and I think that's why we see this deliberate push to try to discredit them. And we see there's so many supposedly pro-black accounts on Twitter that are all, like, there's been a memo sent out to them with, like, information that they're all supposed to post simultaneously that are all just explicitly attacking white people that are, rioting or whatever. I'm not going to say rioting because a lot of it is just anecdotal. They're like, look, a white smashed the window. Oh, look, this white burnt this Wendy's down. Oh, look, it's all the whites. It's all the whites. Like, there's this deliberate push to drive this wedge between them because any of the changes any material changes that may come of this or have already happened is because of the rioting and the looting. Like, I'm not going to hold back from saying that. I don't care what anybody says. Absolutely. But we've seen that peaceful protests do not achieve shit because we've had how many black people be killed on camera and not a goddamn thing has changed about it until shit started getting burnt down. Well, then you actually see... You ask these people, you're like, I was just talking to a buddy yesterday, and it's like, I asked him knowingly, like, so what was it about, this murder that really made the difference to have all this happen? Right? And that's the irony, right? Is that well, the actual reason that this actually achieved like mass mobilization has nothing to do with the racial politics about it. It has to do with the fact that everyone's fucking out of work, furious because everyone's life has been taken from them. Yeah, it's material. Like I said, it's a material thing. It's the $20 down to the counterfeit 20 is a material thing. The COVID lockdown, this restlessness, the 30% unemployment. And this is where I wanted to show you guys just that concept. And it's nothing new necessarily, but I thought maybe it would be interesting to just kind of touch upon like a little bit of like right-wing theory. Maybe that would be interesting to people or something. There's this concept of the cathedral, and I sent you guys this video. I see this as one of the biggest threats going on right now in that just this kind of like self-regulating groupthink of the liberal mainstream intelligentsia has basically just been able to use Black Lives Matter as a way for them to just have a dog in the race when it comes time for the Hegelian dialectic to do its magic and go like, all right, so in all this, there will be an I'm not even stoned this time. Like a challenging narrative. There we go. There will be a challenging anti-hegemonic, counter-hegemonic. Thank you. Yeah. And so through this concept of like the cathedral, right, which is basically just like it's almost kind of like how libs talk about like the YouTube to fascist pipeline, but this is kind of like an opposite thing of being like, no, like college to media to elected offices, there's like just this uniformity that's baked into it that perpetuates itself. Yeah, right? Absolutely. And this is reproduces. And it's interesting to me because this is just like this is like a kind of structural analysis from or institutional analysis from like a right winger, and I think that's interesting. But like, does represent professional class, activist class, right? I mean, these are college educated people that are overrepresented in professional jobs,
Right.
And yeah, I mean, they're just there. So, I mean, I'm just repeating myself now, but I found it really, I don't know. It's an interesting way.
Well, yeah.
Because again, like, it's just, I guess the reason I'm repeating myself is because this seems like the absolute central point to this entire thing. And so, like, the conflict that's going on in CHAZ of, like, the battle for the soul of this thing is the issue, right? At least within the left, right? We could get to the whole terrorist designation stuff, which is still really distressing to me. But, like, at least within the left, like, fighting for the reins of what's going on right now is so important. Is so important. And, like, and like there and looking at it through the lens of the cathedral gives us a pretty useful shorthand to be able to just to identify what allegiance Black Lives Matter has and whose interests will be carried out. Because again, like I said to you guys, I think that one thing that I think leftists fall into that can not benefit us is that talking about capital as if it isn't splintered in a lot of ways. And like, I'm sure that there's like orthodox Marxists that are like just like spitting right now by like hearing me say something like this, but like, so like fuck them, whatever. Like, I think for myself, but like, there are like a lot of different factions and like people that are like motivated by just different ideas. Right. Yes. And yeah, I think that this like cultural project that Black Lives Matter represents on behalf of the cathedral is just, it's like anti-human. I think it's just very bad.
We get it. You're racist. We get it. You don't like black people. I get it. I don't know how many times.
Right winger here, right?
Yeah, I don't know how many times you have to say it. We get it. The cathedral, all these fancy words. What you're really saying is the N word, the hard R. That's all I hear. Cathedral is dog whistle for the N word.
Well, I mean, it is. It's just is like an alt-right term. So,
right. It was just mentioned on Fox News for the first time. I don't know if you knew that, Slav, but Greg Gutfeld actually referenced the cathedral himself.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. I swear you could just look it up on YouTube.
Greg Gutfeld? Wait, isn't he of the Five, or what's he on? Is he
the weird-looking clown guy, you know? I don't know, the guy on Fox that makes all the jokes.
He's got creepy eyes.
He's pretty funny actually sometimes, but he referenced the cathedral. So I think it's a great way to get some insight into the right. So this is like what we were talking about a little bit earlier too, is like the right is confused in a lot of ways. There's a lot of contradictions on the right because they recognize some things, right? But then if it conflicts with their cultural views, then they completely discredit it. So they recognize structural things. They identify it as the cathedral, right?
Yes.
But they can't identify the structural exploitation at the heart of the capitalist labor relations. And that's something to me that it's like we were talking about earlier. They're against the state. The right is libertarian when it suits their cultural views. Okay, so yeah, state and religion, whatever the fuck the case may be, or free speech. But then if it comes to somebody they don't like, they don't want those same rights for them. So it's the same thing with the economic thing. And I think I think the one thing that the cathedral, like I watched that video you sent me, and I think the one thing that it definitely identifies really correctly is that a lot of people who claim to be left or even view themselves as leftists in academia and in the PMC and, the higher classes are literally against economic, they're against economic progress, and they latch on to these cultural issues precisely because they don't actually want change, because they are in a very comfortable place in society. Academics, PMCs, they don't want the system to change, and they don't even have a true conceptuality of what the underclass is. And this even goes back to, the communist international writing on how they analyze the riots. And it's like,
Including the like absolute
yeah, it's like
contradiction
it's like
to
it's
the
like
working class. It's crazy.
exactly they view it like that, but they don't even understand there is no proletariat. The proletariat in the Western Hemisphere, by and large, was outsourced 30, 40 years ago. So it doesn't really exist a proletariat anymore in the West. Like, not in the same way that the proletariat was conceptualized and the way that these people are using it, right? So when they're role playing as the underclass, when they're really ignoring the real underclass, which is like the inequality of neoliberalism has expanded the lumpen proletariat and like struggling petty bourgeois. Those are the people that have gotten bigger. The proletariat's basically completely destroyed. It only exists in like factories in China, Indonesia, Vietnam, like these countries that are actually mass producing goods for the world. Right?
Well,
so I think that's yeah.
And I think that like one of the biggest flaws, like, God, it took me fucking so goddamn long to be able to find a video that I found like even remotely approaching acceptable to show you guys, just because like the biggest flaw from what I've read about this concept of cathedral is just that like right wingers can't just get, like, at least the people that were discussing it just like can't get over that line. They can't just bring it that last 10 yards over into the end zone because they're still just going to fall back on idealism, right? Like it's still at the end of the day like you get people talking about like, well, there's institutions and how they're structured, and you're like, oh cool, like I want to hear more about that, and then the rest of the whole fucking discussion is just all about the actual ideas, and it's like, no, but like talk about the structures more, right? Because like that's what we need to focus on, you little retards. But I will give credit there, and maybe perhaps like kind of contradict myself a little bit here, which is like, we're talking about just how wacky class lines are drawn now, and I think that maybe there is something to be said for acknowledging that the power of ideas plays a retardedly bigger role in this stuff than it did in the past.
Right.
Because I mean, like you see these videos of things, and you go to this stuff, and you see like so many people actively acting against their own self-interest, and just I don't know, man. Like it's the mind virus.
Exactly, that's the hegemony. That's what it does. That's the consent part of the state.
I think the cathedral thing to me struck me as the neo-libcon center hegemony, the root of power, and the right seeing a lot of their elected officials throughout history sort of being further or closer away from it, sort of being how co-opted they are towards it, and just measuring it based on that. And that makes sense to me because you could mirror image that to the left. How co-opted are the left leaders? And, you go around the world throughout history, a lot of leftist, socialist people getting into power, and they get coalesced into the blob, into the neo-libcon elite, and they start being less and less socialist. Same thing happens with the far right. They just become, as you get closer to the sources of power, what they do is that they give you a taste of the benefits of it, and they try to co-opt these people, whoever's, the best of the left or the best of the right, whoever gets ascended to that level, they try to give them a taste of the power and co-opt them. And if that doesn't work, then, they kill them, So it's like, it's either or. But yeah, it's sort of just that it's a gravitational pull. No matter how, as you get closer to it, higher up in power, where you could get closer to the levers to actually change things, you get more drawn and sucked into their ideology. And that's what they do. And that's how they preserve themselves. That's how they replicate themselves, because anybody who gets even close to threatening them becomes one of them or gets tossed to the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And so now the very concept of like a activist movement challenging them, they have their own mannequin to stand in that place that has tax exempt status in the form of Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, I don't
like you have ex-presidents donating to this.
Oh
like,
yeah.
like,
What are all those
on.
images? The Democrats kneeling, Mitt Romney saying Black Lives Matter, Jamie Dimon kneeling in front of the vault, Bezos telling somebody,
you're a customer. I'd like to not have the business.
Yeah, somebody said all lives matter, and he clapped back at them, and that was like a headline for him. Like
God.
the elite,
That was.
and I was posting about this the other day. It's like it costs them nothing. It costs them nothing to say Black Lives Matter. It costs them nothing.
Absolutely.
People put so much emphasis on the fact that they can say it. It's like, what do those words mean? They're a platitude. They're empty. These rich motherfuckers can say it and get their credit, their social credit, and be in the good and be in the right for nothing, no cost to them, no material cost to them. And if your standards are that low, this is the thing, I'm not optimistic about all this. I think this is all very bad. And I don't think that the elite are splintered. I think they splinter the people. I think that's what they do. I think the people being splintered is a result of them pulling the puppet strings. They fake, endorse BLM and push these, highlight CHAZ and all these things because they want this splintering to go down. They want this infighting to spread among the people, among the masses, because
it also helps their marketing too.
Absolutely. Yeah. What every single company I see has some notification of, hey, regarding all this stuff in the news that you be seeing, just so you know, we're cool, we're down. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like your fucking bank telling you this. And it's like, oh, thank God.
Smart told me that shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, thank God, because I was feeling guilty that maybe I was putting my money in this account or, subscribing monthly and you're racist. Who knows?
Right, as long as we're not remembering that they targeted low-income black neighborhoods for
exactly
home loans.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean,
it's not even about that. They're exploiting fucking people all over the world every fucking day, giving them 1% of what their labor is worth to be able to become billionaires. That's I think the thing.
Rebel, you cut out. You cut out for you guys too?
No. He is still going for me.
Oh, whoops.
Yo.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay, no, it's not good. Yeah, no, I'm saying that that we have to separate Black Lives Matter, and I think that's the challenge here for materialists, is to not go down the trap of condemning the whole uprising and all of the fruits of this contradiction coming to the fore. We shouldn't just throw these fruits away as if they're poison because there's a few poison apples in there. We should keep what's good from this and separate it from what we obviously know. So this is an argument I hear a lot too from the materialist left. I'm not going to say the anti-idpol left because I think that's just like a retarded term. You know what I mean?
Man.
Right.
Just like class reduction is.
So let's just say the materialist left. What I hear from them a lot is falling down the trap of dismissing this entire movement just because corporations are looking to co-opt the passive, liberal, divisive side of it, which is the idpol, BLM kind of movement.
Right.
And this is exactly why I tried to talk about this entire thing again. It's just because it's like, if you can just say, no, the Hegelian dialectic, the role of Black Lives Matter for the cathedral, boom, we just put words to it. We can stop talking about this whole thing. They keep talking about it endlessly. And it's like, no, we have the words for this. We can put a name if it's mentionable, it's manageable, simplified.
Yes.
I just saved you 50 posts. Now shut the fuck up. And yeah, exactly. And let's try to be constructive now. It didn't mean to cut you off.
Constructive.
That's right.
And I think that's the most important thing. Put that aside, critique that to shit. For we know what it is, but to dismiss the entire rage that's coming to the surface, that this force, this force that can actually be revolutionary in the long term, I think is a huge mistake. So it's an opportunity for materialists more than anything. I think people that are disappointed that it's getting diverted to idpol and it's going the wrong way, I think they're not seeing the potential to start opening people's eyes.
I think it's dead. I think as soon as it started...
People are listening to it. I know people are listening to it because if you talk to people and you tell them, yes, Of course, it's fucked up. Of course, there's systemic racism. Of course, the police are killing black people disproportionately. But do you know why that is? It's because black people are disproportionately poor. It's because and then they'll be like, well, that's because they're black. And you'll be like, okay, how can you fix that? If we made everybody have a social support structure where nobody was forced into crime, people had enough means to live a comfortable life because the 1% wasn't gobbling up all the fucking wealth to have useless amounts of money in their accounts and just do the most retarded shit, then we wouldn't have this problem, would we? Because you can get people to agree to that. You can get people to say, look, the data here shows that black people are disproportionately targeted. They're identified.
You can't get the right to agree to that. You can't get the right to agree to that.
Of course you can. I heard people on the right saying it. That's what's so crazy. I've been listening to a lot of the takes from the right. I don't know, Slav, or if any of you guys have. And I've seen a lot of people on the right admit to they're like, of course we're against police brutality. They're like, of course we know there's a problem with the police killing people. Of course we know. And what's one of the main narratives out of the right? Black people are disproportionately killed because they disproportionately commit crime. If you follow that one step further, these are people that listen to data. You say, okay, the data shows they're disproportionately poor as well. Could that be a reason that they're committing?
No, I agree. No, I mean, obviously I know that, but
then you get them on that. And then you say, if we uplifted these people's material condition, do you think that would have an effect on their crime rate? Do you think it would somehow?
But they don't think that. They don't think that. They don't think that at all. I mean,
get them to that point.
I don't know. They don't. They think they think that they're black and that there's something in their DNA that makes them commit crime. That's it. That's simple as that.
Dude, no, I don't like these.
Some of them.
No, this is the thing. This is the thing. Is like the rebel's totally right. And if you look at these, sorry. If you look at just like what's going on in their discourse right now, I mean, like, yeah, dude, like there's a lot of infighting and there's a lot of what's being perceived as capitulating to. I mean, I was posting about this the other day. Like I think that the main driving force behind this is basically just like Kushner trying to make hay for a re-election campaign to get black votes, right? And I think that a lot of people are seeing that. And I think that a lot of people are considering that to be really cynical in a bad way, which is funny because that's just like how naive a lot of normies are, right? Like as if pursuing votes is doing politics poorly or something. But yes, like you're totally right. And I mean, what George W. Bush said, Black Lives Matter. Mitt Romney said Black Lives Matter. I'm probably forgetting a bunch of other people that said it. I listened to a few right-wing podcasts just to like see how
that's good.
The retarded kids in the corner eating paste are doing, and I'm just kidding. I don't.
We still love them.
But like I specifically hear people talking about how like conversation on the right regarding, and like their words not mine, like material circumstances is becoming like more of a thing within the right. I think it's just because like there's only so much you can do. Well, okay, straight up, all I need to say is like basket of deplorables, right? Look at how that statement was reacted to. Right. They're a basket of deplorables, and then they go, "Lady."
Statement. It was a blatantly classist statement,
and they played it that way, and they played it well. And they say, "Lady, you don't know the first fucking thing about the things I've gone through," which is the correct thing to say, and also exactly what we're talking about. You know, like I don't. No, man, I wouldn't dismiss them quite so easily. Having said that, I'm not optimistic about it because they don't represent
the majority.
Exactly. They don't. It doesn't even need to be the majority or not. It's just they don't represent people that actually have like control over the levers.
Megaphones.
You know what I mean,
they're the class.
And this is what I say. And this is what I say to MAGA shitheads. It's just like, oh, you realize you're a cuck though for being like a right populist because there's no incentive to carry out what you want.
No, they're the class reductionists of the right, and I remember I was saying the other day that those people I think we can get to and build that. I don't want to dismiss. I didn't mean to dismiss them all as like racist. All I'm saying is that when the culture war gets fed, right, and the left takes a culture war angle in the majority, all that does is push the right to defensiveness. You get what I mean? Like even if you are somebody who could be like, you could be somebody who's like, you could be convinced to that point that you're making, Rebel, right? The obvious point that, it's about class. Even if you're somebody who could be convinced of that, if you're getting this angle at you that, oh, your race is deplorable and, black people are superior to you and you're inferior because you're evil and Yakub and all that shit. If you're getting that angle, you're the better part of your mind that could make that connection. You might not reach that because humans are emotionally motivated. They do reasoning based off emotion and not logic. So they might they might get defensive and be like, oh, well, no, they're actually black, and that's why they're animals and they're racist. So, I mean, I don't mean to dismiss them all as that, but I think if the left takes the culture war angle, then what do you expect? You're gonna get that back. You're gonna get it back.
No, I agree with you, and my point. Sorry to cut you off. I know my point wasn't at all that we can just like convince all right wingers or we can convince everybody. My point was that the materialists should take the view where it just tells people about the material things, the material contradictions of this moment. And I think that argument in and of itself could make headway right now because a lot of people are confused and a lot of people are sick of the culture war shit.
So what I deal with, so I've dealt with a lot of right-wingers in my day, obviously growing up in Alabama. So, and that's kind of the realm I operated in for about 15 years or so. So what I usually deal with is you're going to get, and what I've heard a lot from people is like, okay, well, look at all these white people too that have also been killed by cops. Like you get that a lot too. Or you get like, oh, well, obviously these black people are just like animals and they're just going to do crime and that's why this is happening, right? So what I always like to do is if they're not going to acknowledge race, which is like, sure, some of them might not. I don't think that that's a right characterization of all people on the right because I think that a lot of people on the right are a lot more open as far as racial ideas go than what most people give them credit for. Because they're in it more for themselves than they are in it for this idealism, to me. At least most people that I know that are on the right, or most of
absolutely.
What's going to help me? That's most people in general.
Absolutely.
So it's just they easily fall for this rhetoric, but they don't even actually believe in a lot of it themselves. Now, there's going to be some super ultra far right, like ethno-state people, sure. But like most people I know that are even quote alt-right can tell you that ethno-state shit's bullshit. And they're just like, it's just people that are easily sold on that rhetoric. But what I usually do is if they're not going to buy into like, oh, well, like, look, the reason why these black people are committing more crimes is because they're poor. I'll just skip over that. I'll point to, okay, what about this white homeless dude that that got shot?
Exactly.
What about this white dude that was crawling in the hallway that they told to put his hands up and they shot him?
Daniel Shaver, yep. So exactly.
What about these people? What made those people get shot by the police? And most of the time they're going to tell you, like, it's going to boil down to that they're poor. Like, or they're committing a crime in one way or another. You're going to ask them why. They can get there with white people along the
exactly. Or authoritarianism. You just say authoritarianism. You just say, yo, aren't you scared of the government fucking taking your shit and fucking your life up because they disagree with you? Because they're part of this woke SJW shit? Aren't you worried about that? So it's like, I always say that too. When this thing first happened, I was like, I've always said this. The left is always about a cop this, a cop that. I hate the cops. Fuck the cops. And I'm always like, yo, cool, that's fine. But the cops kill white people too. It's like, you can say the cops are racist, sure. And like whatever was saying, like they're not all individually racist.
Data.
Yeah, sure. I mean, okay, there's a lot of racism with the cops. But either way, the point being is like, this shouldn't just be boiled down to a black people, white cops thing because they kill white people. They kill white people. They don't kill rich white people.
For a white person growing up in like Birmingham, Alabama, I've been profiled and as well as my family based on our possessions.
Yes,
exactly. Exactly.
That was part of my point with the data. When I was mentioning the data, is that you show them the data and you show them exactly what class of people are killed more, arrested more, charged more, imprisoned more. And you're going to see that it basically matches up. Of course, there's going to be a slight difference, but it's nowhere near what the complete average is, right? So if you look at the people by their income and across racial lines, you see that it's more or less the same. it's nothing near what it is when you look at the general, how many black people are killed and how many white people are killed in proportion to their number, because it's classist.
Yeah,
because then when you compare the data, you realize the cops kill poor people. The cops are out for the lumpen pro.
No, we all agree. We all agree.
Community, you're not seeing the cops. Like
right, exactly. They're not killing rich white people. They're not killing rich black people.
Exactly.
We all agree on that. It's just the avenue. What's the avenue to get to that point? So do you take the avenue of, look at these black people struggle. The reason why they're angry is that, they're getting killed because they're black, but really it's because they're poor? Or do you take the avenue of, hey, you're white, right? You only care about yourself and your group, right? They'll kill you. They'll kill you too. So think about that, and then from there, realizing that maybe you can make a connection to the outgroups. But if you start with the outgroups, and that's part of what we were talking about initially about the allyship and solidarity thing, is like the problem with a lot of the left is that they want 100% pure empathy with an outgroup. That is not not doable. It's not attainable. And it's deliberately pushed by the elite because they know it's not attainable. They know that the average person cannot do that. You can't achieve solidarity by being, see that person over there, you know nothing about him, you never lived anything close to his life. We want you to empathize with him 100%. They know that's impossible, that humans can't process that shit. Average humans can't do that, understandably. They should, but they can't. So they know that, so they push that because they know it's a non-starter. But if you go the other angle and you say, yo, you got these struggles, right? Let's acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge what the root of your struggles are. Let's just only talk about that shit, like a nationalist, like a Nazi. Talk about that and then be like, hey, you know that those struggles you're talking about? These other groups have that. That's right, exactly. I think you got to go with that approach first, because if you go with the empathy approach first, which is what a lot of the left want to do, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not, and that's what this Black trans life thing protest is. It's not going to get anybody. You're going to end up, finessing a small group of liberals and acquiring one plus one liberal, minus one liberal here and there. You're battling over them.
People further away.
Exactly. And if you look over the median to the right, all that shit is washed away. All that shit is gone. You've pretty much written them off. And I don't think that's the strategic approach in terms of how do we practically get to something? You know what I mean? I don't think that's the right approach.
Right. No, I mean, I think the situation I think you're 100% right that that's an argument that would definitely work better with like white right-wing people. 100%. Whatever you can use to bring people onto the materialist side, I think works. And it's who you're appealing to. I think that just as much as there's an avenue open to convert people from the right to materialist, I think there's a huge avenue open for that too, for urban lumpentroll people who are now just starting to see material realities, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that a lot of the shit that is getting glossed over, you watch a lot of the videos of the looting and rioting, you see it's the exact same looting and rioting that happened in LA, Rodney King
exactly,
happened in New Orleans, and is happening now. And if you analyze that, a lot of people don't want to provide this kind of analysis and it's getting overlooked, but it's the lumpentroll urban people who are mostly people of color, okay, they're either Hispanic or black, right, that are lumpen proletarianized generationally, okay? So we have this class that everybody is ignoring, and it's only getting bigger and bigger, because as the prole shrinks and the petty bourgeois expands, then we have people being pushed into both sides, right? So we have all this energy that's just under the surface that at any time can come out, because there's this class that everybody's ignoring that are filling up the jail. So there's the highest incarceration rate in the world. These people are a class. This is a complete class onto itself, right? I think there's revolutionary potential there too. And I think that people on the left often dismiss that side completely as, oh, these are the lumpen proles. There's no reason to appeal to them, right? But I think that when it comes to actually moments of eruption like this, I think the lumpen prole are best suited to actually commit the physical material acts that are needed to force some kind of change, right? And I think a lot of the white communist kids that are supposedly quote unquote responsible for a lot of what's going on, I think they can also be part of that class. They're also part of that class that kind of lives outside the capital relations, right?
And so you get a lot of hardcore materialists dismissing the rioting and stuff as reactionary. And it's like, sure, it is reactionary, but it's a real reaction to a real stimuli that represents real energy.
Exactly.
So what it is not just saying, oh, it's reactionary, that's like bullshit. Sure, it's reactionary. What the matter should be is taking that analysis and figuring out how can we make this reactionary action something that's actually revolutionary or something that can actually be productive. How do we funnel this reaction?
Exactly.
So that's like where I disagree with a lot of these like analysis, like Amy or whatever, saying like, oh, like this is all just a bunch of people looting. We don't agree with looting, blah, blah, blah. It's because it creates unsafe work environment, whatever the fuck.
Or dead labor. It's turning dead labor into a life. Like, shut the fuck up, man. The working class doesn't understand what the fuck you're talking about.
Exactly. Well, that right there is
nothing.
This is just dead labor that live labor is going to have to replace later. Like, nah, don't say that kind of shit. Like, try to at least have a kind of language that the common person understands, you know?
Exactly. And it's like, it's sure, maybe that's happening. Like, and maybe like it's not the perfect route, but what it is that it's raw energy and reaction. And that raw energy should be not just acknowledged and definitely not discounted or just thrown away. It should be acknowledged, and then we should try to focus on it and try to incorporate it. It shouldn't just be like, oh, this is stupid, like, let's just wait until the next thing comes up. No, this is real revolutionary energy in one way or another. It represents one thing or another, even though the people at the realms and on the reigns aren't doing it in the right motion or with the revolutionary character. A lot of the people who are involved in it simultaneously just as themselves, like even I went down to some protests and shit, are actually revolutionary or representing a more revolutionary energy. So it's a matter of being able to cast away what's hindering it rather than just discarding it the whole
No, I
thing.
agree with you. Like, yeah, like like how you use the anger of a white person, of a underclass white person, and you cater to what their struggles are. You can take that reactionary energy and funnel it to something bigger, just like that. You would do this with this protest. You could.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, those materialists, like, I don't know about Amy's takes. I don't know about hers. I haven't been watching, but Red Scare or Tracy, like, as soon as this was going down, I was like upset about their shit because like they were making reactionary takes. They were like, oh, they're robbing the Gucci store. I don't like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, you don't like that because you shop there. Like, obviously, you're fucking clown. Like,
bro,
you
if
fucking
the Gucci store next to my house was broken into, I'm stealing some shit. Like,
No, Anna,
I've never had that before.
Yeah,
you know?
The contradictions produce that. You act like you're a materialist, and when the contradictions manifest themselves in front of your face, you're like, nah, fuck this contradiction.
Yeah, she revealed.
It didn't happen the way I wanted it to. This dialectic is not going the way I planned it. Like,
yeah, she was like,
disregards material circumstance completely.
Right. She was like, watching these wokies like try to defend why they're looting the Gucci store. It's like, oh, you're showing your hand. Like, you're showing what your real class interests are. You care about the Gucci store. That's the only reason you're making this commentary. Is like, you're worried about that. You're worried about that because that's where you live.
It's a purity test coming from a place of a status of somebody who has a good position in society, right? Because they don't actually really want to see certain things manifest, or they just want to put everything through a purity test. Is this a completely, proletariat consciousness revolution? No, then fuck it, and it's not like that. You don't get the kind of energy and the contradictions that you want. You have what's there, and you have to somehow work with it, right? And I think that I think that you had a great point, like, to take this reactionary energy. I think that should be like, what's this, like, we're analyzing all the problems, but what's the solution? What can people on the left materialists do? They can just try to reach out to people and convert them to a more materialist point of view using any argument that you have for any specific demographic. Like, if talking about how cops kill white people works with underclass white people, perfect. Use that argument with them.
Yeah, know your audience. Know your audience.
Right? It's talking about, because the people that I usually talk to will be people of color. So when I'm talking to them and I'm trying to convince them that it's not about racism, I get through to almost every single person I've ever spoken to. And I know it's very anecdotal, but it happens to be a very strong argument when you tell people, listen, racism only exists because of classism. Okay, so if you really make everybody on the same, you present that argument to them, they're very receptive to it. So I think that to dismiss this moment out of hand without actually trying to reach out to people and convert them to the materialist side, just dismissing this out of hand as, oh, this is just it pull. Yeah, of course there's it pull. Of course there's a force fighting against our vision, right? What we want, our interests. And that force is the BLM. That force is the quote unquote cathedral, right? Like there's all these interests aligned against materialist interests.
No.
Yeah, I'll push back there. I think that's the sly BLM is the sly strategy to try to beat us to the punch.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that the actual protests themselves are the vehicle for change.
Exactly. That's why I was mad at anybody who was dismissing these people like for rioting or whatever. I was angry about that shit from the jump, just like I was mad about the MAGA thing, the MAGA protest, because I thought it was material too. But there's the thing is like there's a difference between that and being in denial of the fact that they're co-opting this. You cannot deny that they're co-opting it.
Well, it's to co-opt.
No, but I don't think it's attempting. They've got it already. I think they've already got it.
I think it's an illusion that they got it. I think it's an illusion that they have it. I don't fully agree with that. Because I don't think that we're being exposed to we don't know everything that's going on. We're getting like bits and pieces.
Sure,
of everything.
we can debate whether it's co-opted or not. It's still fairly early, right? What is it? It's only a couple weeks or so. But either way, the point being is like I don't think the method of which they're co-opting it. I don't think we can take that and say that try to co-opt their co-opting. You know what I mean? You can't. Yeah. You can't do that. You can't co-opt what they're doing to co-opt it. You gotta do your own thing. You can't jump on their shit of like the BLM shit and reactionary right wing shit. You can't jump on it and try to finesse that. You gotta come at it from a new angle. You have to. I don't think there's any way to turn this shit to reframe the things that they're doing and redirecting the narrative and try to paint it as something real. I don't think you can go into this whole like, oh yeah, Gone with the Wind being taken off HBO. Actually, I think that, there's a way we can talk to those people who believe that's revolutionary and make them revolutionary. I don't think you can take that angle. You got to come with you got to be outside of that. You got to be like, yo, what the fuck does that mean? I don't know what the fuck that means. Like, I'm talking about this.
To be fair, Gone with the Wind was only temporarily taken off, so they're
just fixing it, or they're adding like.
Oh, thank God!
Yeah, people are losing. You're not going to try to co-opt this.
Thank God.
It's kind of absurd. I mean, when I was saying like when I went down to CHAZ and I said that like I felt like optimistic and all of that. Like, I mean, make no mistake, I still feel like this is like doomed. Like I definitely feel like this is doomed.
Good.
But like, but it makes me optimistic to see that there are people that are doing this correctly and doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
And and like I don't know. We could get into a deep philosophical discussion about like why one should even get up in the morning and all of this. But like,
please tell me.
I really do think that like, is there a good chance? Is the overwhelming chance? I'll just say good chance. Is there a really good chance that this doesn't accomplish anything outside of just another win for reactionary forces and all of that?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Do I want to spend this entire time not trying to do I want to spend this entire time bitching and feeling depressed all the time, which is what I do even when crazy shit isn't going down? Do I want to actually try to get involved and fucking do something? And like again, like it's not really hard to sit and make like a rational argument against the person trying to be optimistic. That's basically historically the easiest fucking thing to do in any circumstance.
Absolutely.
But like, I don't have any fucking time for it. I don't have any fucking time for that, right? And again, like, I'm not like, just jump off a fucking bridge if that's what it's always. No, like I really fucking
my
mean
whole
it.
point, right?
Yeah, just a fucking meteor's gonna crash into Earth. The sun's gonna die someday. Nothing is ever gonna be good. You know what I mean? Like no, shut the fuck up, get busy, and stop bitching. And like, I can still have a wide-eyed appreciation for the folly that I see in this. And yeah, like when I'm there and I see like there's something going on, and one of these ANCOMs comes up, and it's like, oh, don't give this guy any attention to one of these right winger guys who's a rabble rouser. Like, he's like, don't give this guy any attention. There's queer women of color on stage. Center them. And I like here. I know. I actually did.
Fuck.
I actually did. Yeah.
You did what?
I got some good footage. I honestly might just like email. I honestly might just like message you guys some of the footage first.
You did what?
I watched some of what you posted before you deleted it. I went through, like, there was a bit of a thread there. Because I remember I saw a video of that same guy earlier in the day, posted by, like, some right-wing guy.
Yeah,
so
like
I
Jack
remember
Posobiec. It was
exactly.
a trip seeing that, dude. Where, like, I was on that guy, like, white on rice for, like, an hour. And then, like, right-wing news was making hay. Sorry, but what were you saying?
Oh no, I was just saying I watched those videos, so I'm glad that you were able to catch that, because it was bizarre watching it from both angles.
Yeah, well, it made me have like a goddamn panic attack yesterday, where I was just like, oh my god, like it's such a weird experience of being like, it's like you went outside and you saw that the sky is blue. And you're like, I know that the sky is blue because I saw it with the cones in my own fucking eyes. And then someone on TV is like, hey, everyone else in the world, the sky is red. And you're like, no, you son of a bitch, it's blue. And like you just feel deeply helpless.
Absolutely.
It was like. Yeah. It honestly, like, fucked my entire night up. I, like, went to bed early. I was like, I feel deeply depressed. But, again, that's even more to the point, which is just like, if it wasn't meaningful, I probably wouldn't have felt anything. And, like, maybe that's idealistic, but, like, I don't buy into the idea that Michael Tracy or Anna oppose people breaking into the Gucci store because that's going to rob them of their next shopping trip. I think that they oppose people breaking into the Gucci store because they just can't ever possibly be part of some kind of majority group, and they need it. I mean, I'm just making the contrarian argument. And that's fine, right? And like,
no, there's something to that. There's something very real to that.
Yeah, and this is just and just like how I need to make some qualifier of say like, oh, I'm making the contrarian argument, like. No, these are symptoms of the terminally online. Get the fuck off your computer and go fucking help somebody. And, like, it all looks a lot different when I'm, like, in the community garden and people are working together and I'm there and I'm like, fuck, what can I do to help? You know what I mean? And, like, guess what? Yeah. Like, maybe you won't be as fucking miserable if you do that.
You feel a lot better.
Right. You feel a lot better, and maybe that's narcissistic and maybe that's really small, but I don't know. I'm convinced that none of them have a better answer for me. They got plenty of critiques, but,
No, I mean, a lot of the DSA shit is like that, too, of like, just do action, the theorizing and the criticizing and the contemplating, that's one thing, but, how much community work are you doing, and that type of questioning and that type of vetting.
And like they're literally right about that. Like
I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about that because, I get what you're saying. Like, you can be an armchair theorist all day and it won't mean shit.
There's something for being able to analyze everything. Like you still need to have that analysis from outside of the actual objective analysis in order to be able to have. Like, obviously, sure, like, it gets to a certain point where it's like, okay, you're no longer helpful, you're more so hindering this whole thing.
Yeah, intellectual masturbation, yeah.
But it's like, at a certain point, there is a need for analysis outside of that, and there's also something to be said for the fact that who knows what the fuck, what is this action that most of these DSA people are talking about, right? Like, getting them to vote for fucking your next AOC, like what is it?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying like,
but I'm calling bullshit on the argument in this case because this is when moves are being made.
Oh, absolutely.
People are on the fucking ground, And like, yeah, like we're not talking about like having a good ground game for primary season. Like shit's happening right now.
Right.
And so like I have no fucking time for it. Like
Yeah,
get
but
the
moves
fuck
for
out
what?
there and do something.
But moves for what though? Moves for what?
Moves for literally whatever the fuck you want to decide it's gonna be for. Like there's a lump of fucking clay, and you gotta have the fucking will to start molding it to what you want it to be. Because some people are calling it CHAZ, and some people are calling it CHOP. And personally, I think it should be named Chad. I think it should be named Chad. Chad should refer to Seattle Police Department as the version Seattle Police Department.
Yes.
And you know, that's not going to be part of the fucking culture or the conversation unless I fucking get out there and I start fucking making
it happen.
Absolutely. But a lot of it, what I'm seeing is like, for instance, I went down to these Denver protests. I was there the very first night that they happened in Denver. So it was more so just spontaneous action. There was no real leadership present. So there was a fuckload of people just on the street fucking shit up, right? So then that felt really raw. It felt real. There felt like people there had real stakes in place, and like people were getting gassed left and right and shot here with like whatever, right? And then I go back 3 days later on Sunday, and it's just completely just people sitting in the park on their towels drinking White Claw and hanging out. So like what I see a lot of it's like, I went out there, and what I found, I went a week later, and it's even worse into that, right? So it's completely led, and essentially it's people sitting down in like our Civic Center amphitheater, and there's people reading poems, etc., on an open mic, and everyone's sitting around in a circle around it. Well, I was there because a friend of mine came down to be a part of it last week, and I was there, and I watched someone walk up on stage and like start trying to talk more about class and talk about first of all, they would not let any white people, right? So it's just I see someone who's mixed go up on stage, and they're talking about having the biracial experience, how they identify with both white and black, how we're all together, et cetera, and people were yelling her off of the stage. People were trying to get her off the stage, and like people were acting like she was distracting from the whole conversation because she was like not elevating like voices enough or something. So it's like I see like, yes, I want to go down and try to be a part of like maybe turning the tide. Like I went down and I talked to the PSL people there to kind of see what they were doing and see what their influence was at the protest, which was unfortunately very small. But I would not have been welcomed in that environment to try and push anything or try to turn the tide. Right. So for me, it's an issue of like, I feel like I can sit back and analyze. Like I was there. I would have loved to try to, put in some 2 cents. But at the same time, I realized the absolute circumstance and the material circumstance that, like, they don't want to hear me, a white guy, get up there and talk about, it's actually class.
Yeah, let me tell you what your problems are about.
Exactly. So it's a matter
even though you're right. You're totally right. You're totally right.
Other than building small community groups and telling the people that I know about this type of stuff and trying to change the minds of those around me. Like I couldn't go to test and be like, actually, we need a socialist program purely on class. People would probably beat me up and punch me in the face. There's a real and that's what I see as the product and the inner the what's being co-opted here. And I see that that's a huge problem. But it's like, to me, a lot of it that we're getting to the point where it's so filled with that it's hard to be able to co-opt it in any meaningful way.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. This shit
I don't think co-opting it is the way. I don't think it can be co-opted.
That's what I'm saying. Is what I said the last episode, like 2 weeks ago. I was like, this shit is not going anywhere. And I mean, I don't care if it's pessimistic. This shit, in its current iteration, is not going anywhere. And this whole thing is already co-opted from to the brim. It's fucked already, top down. That's why there's a black trans. When I saw that black trans protest going on, I was like, it's done. This thing is over. It's over. Whatever clay there is to mold is done. It's done. It was done a week ago, or it was done 2 weeks ago. And it's
that also might just be a penance, though. Like even though I want to be cynical about that and be like, oh, like this shit's ridiculous, but like obviously, yes, trans people should exist, etc., etc.
What the fuck are you talking about? No way, no way. What the fuck? I'm about to kick this motherfucker. Hold up.
Oh, dude, it's another Fred. Let's
go. They should exist in what universe? No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So, but it's like I want to be cynical about it, but at the same time, I see it as like a penance to where it's like, yeah, like we overtook the Pride Month thing, so like we're gonna try to throw y'all a bone, and like it's a little bit more about like I think it's maybe a little more about that than about being like super just get like obviously they're both. It's a dialectical like
This is where I wanted to go with it. It's
relationship.
Yeah, I want to push back a little bit on that. It's not going anywhere. I think it's too early to make that call. I'm gonna keep an open mind for now, and I'm just because I don't like to play too much into like speculation. Or
are we better off 2 weeks ago or worse now? Are we better off or worse 2 weeks ago?
Hold on. No, I'm going to get to that. We're definitely better off, and I'm going to explain why I think that. So we're definitely better off because we're actually seeing demands for material change be made. Okay, this is a very early stage, so I'm not going to say that it's a victory because I don't think by any means it's anywhere close to a victory yet. But I think at this point in time, it's definitely a step forward from maybe a month ago when no material demands were being made. So I think that, yeah, it's a step forward for now, and I think it could go different ways. Like, it could definitely go the way that you guys are saying, that this energy could be completely co-opted and then either silently put to bed in, like, racial grievances,
right,
or somehow rectified through some liberal symbolism. I agree that that's definitely a possibility, but I'm also leaving the door open to another possibility, which is that through the contradictions in the structure, they've manifested themselves now as contradictions in the superstructure. So we've seen clash of ideologies because of the contradictions of material relations. And then that is in turn going to affect back to the base, because the base doesn't just magically change by itself. The base changes when the superstructure also changes, because without people believing in a new system of material relations, you're not going to have that like different set of material relations. So you're seeing the contradictions begin to maybe have an effect. So if it does work through that, police are in some places actually have their funds lowered, actually have structural changes made to their how they deal with issues like homeless issues or whatever, social issues, if they're taken completely off that's a material change. If that happens, I think that's very encouraging. So I have pessimism. I'm pessimistic, like in the intellectual sense, in the analysis sense, because I think that it could definitely get co-opted and put out by the elites. But it won't be the last contradiction that's going to manifest, but it might get co-opted and completely turn into something channeled into, racial idealism. But it could also end up in having material changes to the base. I think it's way too early for me personally to make like a decision on which way I see it going. I think it will probably, for the most part, the energy will get co-opted, but I'm hopeful that it won't.
I think it's already co-opted. I'm not black-pilled in that there's no hope. I think that this material unrest could be co-opted correctly if you take the right approach. But what we've see,
got to offer opposite, like an outside.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's exactly my point. So that's the part of the other material is us offering the alternative, and that's what I was trying to say. Like, it's not so much about individual action for me, even though that is also in and of itself important. If you're of the means to do that, if you know what I mean. Like some people just.
What if we create a world where you didn't need a counterfeit 20 to survive? What if we created a world where you don't have to worry about the cops coming to take your weapons or whatever if you're right wing or whatever? What if we made that shit happen? Like, that is an argument. I don't think we can take the elite co-opting, which is BLM, the elite co-opting of the movement, and take it and say, all right, well, they're already co-opting it, so let's see if we can play with this mold. I agree with redirecting it and finessing it of the raw energy itself, but BLM is not the raw energy. They're making it that. if they make it that way, we can't play with that because that's already gone. It's too late at that point.
But my point is, at this point in time, there's demands being made for material change. Where they're coming from, because I like to look at material things. Like I try to, as much as I can, put the idealistic analysis aside. So where they're coming from, their motivations are really kind of irrelevant to me in that material changes might be made. If they are made, we'll see in the long term. Obviously, we're not going to see in the next couple of weeks, maybe not even in the next couple of years, if actually the police systems change in certain cities or they don't. Right? But if they do materially change, I think that it doesn't matter how they changed. We got that victory as materialists. Our job basically is to fight the psychological war. We're fighting a culture war in and of itself, even though we don't like to talk about culture. But what we're proposing to people, because people are, like you said, CRK, they're very emotionally driven and they're more motivated by ideology than they are basic material concepts, right? Then we have to appeal to something. So when we are saying everything is materialist, we want to improve everybody's material conditions. We want material changes to your lives that would make the vast majority of people better off. That in itself becomes like a culture to people. So we are fighting that psychological, ideological war. So I think that more effect can be got from constantly being on the front, like you said, COH, like convincing people that you know around you, reaching out to people, because it's like a web. If you truly convert somebody to materialism, when they see that light, I know it sounds kind of fucking religious, but
no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Oh, it shines around them too.
Absolutely.
And then they go and they convert more people. So that's the way to win.
Absolutely.
That's my whole point from the very start of the cast has been that we're in this psychological war and we have to use any and all tools at our disposal. I agree that there's no way to co-opt BLM completely, but I think there's a way to chip away at it. Just like there's a way
you're absolutely right. I've known people who are I've like co-opted people who are liberal, who are rad lib. I've co-opted like a rad femme who's straight feminist, like no class analysis, like hardcore. And I co-opted her like to realize that there was something beyond that. And she starts pushing it on other people. So you're right. I mean, it sounds cult-like, but really, once you see past it, it's hard to forget about it. It's hard to go back to that the state before that. So it's like devolving. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You're right. No, it's true.
I mean, I'm like, I mean, this isn't, quite like the International or anything, but like, CHAZ releasing their like list of demands, right? Wait, did I cut out?
Let's talk about that. No, that's really interesting, actually.
So yeah, and I mean, you and me already talked about it to a certain extent in the chat, but like, there's the rad lib identitarian bullshit in there because of course there is, right? But like, if this group, if the more meaningful leftist factions within what's happening there actually does successfully co-opt this, then my city has I don't know how good of a chance it does, but it has a somewhat of a chance of getting some kind of housing program. And just like a lot of things that positive things, a lot of shit that I fucking want. It would be cool if I could move back into the city proper if I could afford that. You know what I mean? Like, and like that. I mean, again, like I'm not super profesh about insider baseball about this shit. I don't know what that actually looks like for them to achieve this stuff, but I do know that it's an organization of people that are actually demanding this shit. Right. And shit, they might, it's looking like they're going to get the mayor to step down. So I don't know. I want to fucking support them because like it looks like in my little local bubble, they have a real chance of taking this shit over and like getting some real meaningful shit passed here.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
That has nothing to do with centering black trans women or any shit like that. This is that straight shit. This is that straight uncut.
That dope. Shit. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. On a local level, on the local levels, and historically, you see this. The real raw leftism does pop off on the very local level. I guess my pessimism is like on a national level. But you're right, on the smaller levels, when the conditions are right, that shit does happen. It has happened in the past. I don't know if it's it does happen.
Yeah,
it does happen.
Of course. And this is a perfect example.
Just like to be fair, like I mean, the governmental structure of our country, like I think that looking at what's happening on the local level is like a perfectly valid way of looking at this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No, and it spreads. That spreads too.
Their demands, I think, are just such a perfect example of everything that this whole energy is about. Because if you look at their demands, a lot of them are extremely contradictory. Like at first, I looked at them and they're getting into some really core materialist demands. You know, move the funding away from police, change the way that the structure works to enforce the law, change the law, release people, change prison laws, increase housing, education, all kinds of things that are materially good for everybody. And then they go into support black businesses and I'm like, fuck,
black doctors.
This is, oh no. And then another point was that only black doctors or nurses can deal with black patients. And I was like, look, this is a perfect example of the contradiction, of the dialectic that's playing out right before our fucking eyes. People know that it's about material things. Material interests are in a fucking contradictory dialectic with identity interests. Okay? And they're both manifesting at the same time. That's why you see these organic demands. Okay, I think we can all agree that whoever wrote those demands hadn't been co-opted yet, you know? So their demands are basically organic. It's just a manifestation of what they're thinking. So they're still on the capitalist train, right? But they're starting to change. They say, we want this, we want that. You know what I mean? So they're so close, like Slav, you were saying about the right. They're like just that one more yard. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
They're almost there. They're almost there, but they're still stuck in the lib hegemony. Right?
Well, those demands were written actually by one of the senators or some type of representative, right? She's like a socialist representative.
God, I voted for her.
Sawant,
yeah. Well, and you know, funny you say that because there was there was some clip like a few nights ago of like, you know, she let a group of checking my phone. She led a group of the protesters into City Hall. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys have seen these videos. And then you get one of these fucking little, you know, shaved head girl freaks screaming at her about how, like, we appreciate you, but, like, you can't politically co-opt this.
I saw that video.
Yeah, you guys see this. And it's like, and it's like these people just like can't take 5 seconds to stop punching themselves in the face because they don't understand how power works.
Like the one person with power that's sympathetic to them, they just are trying to cast out. Like the one person
she is their
purely emotional.
She should be she is their best friend right now, and they should be seeing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just kind of shows, I think, another contradiction that's manifesting on the left and the right is that people are losing increasingly their trust in government and government institutions, right? So they're all saying, like, what did Trump get elected on? If you ask a lot of his supporters, they'll be like, to drain the swamp.
So, Q shit, anti-establishment stuff.
Right, exactly. And people on the right, and now increasingly people on the left are being woken up to the fact that the political establishment, the ruling elites are corrupt, right? That's another like contradictory like dialectic that's playing out right in front of us. It's manifesting itself in different ways through the left and the right. They're looking at different shit. The right's looking at Soros and the liberals and you know, like the cathedral, and then the left is looking at the Koch brothers and, you know, whoever the fuck billionaires are on that team. You know what I mean? So it's manifesting. You're seeing the effects of that dialectic come to the fore in the people rejecting the authority, but it's just not channeled into the right places yet. That's why I think we're in the stage of just like purely psychological warfare, like just trying to convince people that this is really what's happening and create solidarity. I think that's really important, right? Like being inclusive, you have to reject what the other sides are doing, what the identitarians represent on both sides. They're very exclusionary. Like if you look at black.
Oh yeah, it's black separatist shit. Black separatist shit. That's reactionary.
it's offensively divisive to the point where you just read some of their statements, and if you're not black, you're like, what the fuck? These people hate me.
Absolutely. No, a lot.
And it's
I mean,
designed to do that.
Marcus Garvey, a lot of old black separatist shit that is completely understandable. Just like a lot of white reactionary shit is completely understandable. It still is against. So it's a reaction to capital that is not for solidarity. That won't change anything. That will leave you on an island by yourself, fucked with your own group. And that won't solve anything.
Angry, yeah.
The only way to get your group unfucked is to join the other group that's unfucked. It's the only way. And if you don't do that, you guys are just screwed. You're screwed. But I mean, yeah, in terms of like the demands, like on a national level, I guess defund the police. I will say the one optimistic thing was that there were some. I mean, I'd walk around Brooklyn and see a lot of like white women lives like with like defund the police signs, and I was like, oh god, I was like, perfect. It's just gonna be like defund the police just to knock down their budget X amount, and you know, racism is gone and classism is gone, and be like, oh fucking great, thanks. And it's like I was very like, you know, that was mad depressing, but I saw there were some people. I mean, it's all splintered, right? Some people want defund the police as a means to abolition. Some want it as defund the police to reallocate funds to social services. That demand specifically is interesting. That is a very white pilling, you know, take, because it's like that's great if people are thinking in terms of, all right, not only do you get rid of the bad thing you don't like, but why don't you fund the things that will fix the source of the problem? That is good. Yeah. I just, you know, I mean, I've worked in fields that are close to like social services, and my concern is that a lot of the social services industry itself, the NGOs and nonprofits, is just a lot of, you know, band-aids on bullet wounds and just sort of like funneling money to fix the excesses of where capitalism is you know, just gone overboard. It's not really fixing the source of it, but it's sort of like stopping the bleeding, the hemorrhaging, or whatever.
Or putting a pretty face on it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a way to, you know, we got to keep this system running, and you know, it's falling apart, but we got to, you know, tape the edges from fully combusting. So
that's concession to keep the pigs happy.
Exactly, and you know, that's why I sort of see it as like, you know, even that, you know, but I don't want to be just an ivory tower purist where I'm just like, oh, you know, it's not good enough. You defund the police, you give the social services, and it's not going to change shit. Obviously, sure, that's easy to say, but I will admit that is a pretty good indicator of people getting a materialist mindset, which I guess is a lot of what Rebel is talking about. Is like, that is a good indicator of like, all right, you're thinking about things in the right framework. Maybe you're not hitting it like exactly. Bernie. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
moving in the right direction.
Right.
Like Bernie, like, you know, if he would have been elected or whatever, like honestly, it would have just been some FDR shit that would have just prolonged capitalism forever.
True. Forever. Minimum wage, $15 minimum wage, exactly.
But it's also good that like he had such a wide support, because it makes these ideas more mainstream.
True.
Now, at the same time, it cheapens the ideas because you have people that are talking about them with no real substance or understanding of what they are.
Right,
it gets watered down a little bit.
Right.
So I think the main focus is on like being able to try to be a beacon of like what is not watered down, like of just substance.
Right.
And like trying to tell people what the fuck is up actually. Like, and that's kind of like what my whole thing was like with Bernie, and even with this same thing, it's like it's a good indicator, but at the same time it's like I'm also so personally black-pilled that like it seems like it's just prolonging our own torment. Like
True.
It's good that things are moving in that right direction. Apparently, like you'd think so. Like, okay, socialism hold high or whatever in Georgia. Like, okay, you never would think that, but whatever, sure. But like at the same time, it's like, what is it that they think is socialism, right?
Exactly.
Socialism is just some like, like we think like Black
AOC
matter and that's it.
Free
or
stuff.
Like,
AOC shit.
Free shit. Or like it's like that's the whole issue. It's like we need to be able to spread these ideas to try to take down hegemony, but we need to also be able to like if we're these people who are more confident in our beliefs, we need to be able to try to be the people who
absolutely
substantial rather than just riding the tide, trying to like add real substance, material substance to what it is that's happening.
It's like Slav said of them beating us to the punch. If the materials conditions are rising and socialism is gaining traction, that's a good thing. We should be at the front of that. But if they're beating us to the punch and turning that energy to AOC and Radlib shit like that, then what good is it? What then it's not good for us because they're taking it before we can really turn it into anything real. And that's
what one of my. But whether it's good for us or not, us or not in the short term, it doesn't even matter. We can't really control it. All we can do is work with the clay that we have. You know what I mean? And yeah,
we have so much in-cutting that that almost never will happen. Like there's no real strong voices in the left right now. Like it's just a shitload of people shouting into their own vacuums.
Absolutely,
exactly. It's a starting stage, though. It's like a baby that's just fucking born. You know what I mean? In the U.S., I don't like to cite polls and shit, but I just seen a poll that said, 20. Like the flip side of your argument about how people perceive socialism, 25% of Americans view capitalism favorably now in the last poll taken. So forget about what they think about socialism. I think we're in the stage where people have to first despise capitalism, then you can move them over to socialism. So right now, the connecting framework around all the narratives and how to convert people and bring them over to the materialist side depends on how we use that. Right? It just depends on how we use that hatred of capitalism in our favor. That's all it is at this stage, I think. And yeah, a lot of people are really misguided about what socialism even is, but that's because it's such an early stage. The baby hasn't even grown up yet. It's not even a toddler yet. There needs to be time passing, people's minds slowly changing, warming up to different ideas. I thought socialism was fucked. I was retarded. I used to think socialism is like what they have in fucking communist Russia. Oh, that place is fucked. I don't want to be living in that. Like, that's crazy. Right? Everybody has to go through. At first you have to realize that capitalism's fucked. Then you warm up to socialism. I think that it's just happening in baby stages. So we have to just be out there telling people. And yeah, of course, we're all black-pilled. I'm black-pilled as fuck, too. But I at least try to, you know what I mean? Like, let people know. And then let other people know. And eventually, like, over years and years and years, this shit spreads. That's why I think we shouldn't get too black-pilled. Like, there's definitely the intellectual black pill of us being pessimistic. We can see right in front of our eyes the vast majority of energy being co-opted by the liberals.
I think we're reasonably inoculated. I think we're inoculated to the black pill now, and then I think what we do is we just black pill as many liberals and normie conservatives. That's
the strategy right there.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think Zizek's take on Trump's election was totally spot on, where he's like, no, I support Trump over Clinton because it's gonna wake people the fuck up.
When I first heard that, I was like, this guy's retarded. But now I completely agree with it.
Yeah. Exactly.
I've been trying to talk to my QAnon friends, I want Trump to win this election, bro. But it's not because I think he's the Messiah. I think he's going to make it so bad that we have to change shit. I don't think he's going to change anything at all for us. Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought he was going to win for the longest, but in the last couple months, because of COVID, I'm pretty convinced he's not going to be reelected. I was dead certain he would be reelected for the longest, and now
we'll see if they switch Biden out or not. Honestly,
oh, they will. They will. I mean,
do you really think that?
Absolutely.
I don't know, man. I mean, far be it from me to get in the way of one of your
Cassandra,
predictions.
my Cassandra takes, yeah. I will it.
Black pill the dominance.
I will it into existence. It wasn't going to happen until I said it. But yeah, I mean, the COVID thing.
No. Well, what is the Chappelle bit? Negro Damas.
Yeah, Negro Damas. Exactly.
I was thinking that. I want you to know that as a white boy, I felt a total rush before I said that.
Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney's Negro Damas, yeah.
Yeah.
Legendary.